Good evening and welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Pace and I'm here to fight CPS and stop taking our children. This is a live podcast around the world. And you found me on Facebook and I am broadcast on YouTube and I'm using the StreamYard application. Now there's several ways that you can interact with this podcast. Again, I want to give a warm welcome because a lot of you are experiencing difficult times with the child protection system. I call CPS the child protection system. It's a branch of social services that deals with the protecting of our children from neglect and abuse and also help families in need in food and medical, in clothing, in a job, educational, anything the family is experiencing. That is all part of trying to help out a family in need. Now, you may be going through some hiccups, and if the child protection system thinks your children are in extreme danger, they may take your children. And I'm here to help you understand the child protection system. It's not straightforward. It's very complex. And it has a lot of turns. And I'm sad to say that it's corrupt. I'm very sad to say it is very, very, very corrupt. Now, as I said, there's many ways you can interact. One way is just by being in the room. By being in the room, you're interacting with the podcast. You're listening, and you can take notes. Furthermore, if you want to leave emojis, they're warmly welcome, like thumbs up, hearts, happy faces. And all you have to do is express that. Now, another way that you can participate in this podcast is you can type me a comment, text me a comment or a question about CPS, the child protection system. All I ask you is to show your name, because a lot of you may have names that are maybe you're trying to do a cause or something, maybe snapping alligators or cuddly teddy bears or amazing dreams or something like that. I like a name like Betsy or Bill or Bob or Peggy, those kind of simple names. I don't need a last name. And then I like a city or a county and your state. A city or a county and your state. I'm trying to get an idea across the United States because I have talked to over 500 people in all the states, including Washington, D.C. Also, I have had text questions and comments from other countries experiencing CPS. They too have had issues, and I welcome them. This room is about child protection system and how to protect your children, how to hang on to your children, and not let them traffic your children into foster care or alienate your children. So by texting a comment, I like your name, your city or county, your state. If you're from another country, your city and country. And make sure you're complete with your CPS case. Your CPS case, what I mean by that is if you start off and say, I have a family, I'm a husband, wife, I'm married, or we're girlfriend, boyfriend, or lovers, or whatever the case be, I want to know what your family structure is. And you can say that all the children were by the same husband and wife, or they're different husband and wife, or I'm a single parent. But I'd like you to explain what your family is. I also like you to describe the kids, whether they're young kids or older kids, girls or boys? And then the allegations. What were the allegations besides neglect and abuse? Some more details. And lastly, how the children were taken from you. How the children were taken from you. And then tell me where you're at on your case. Are you at the beginning, the middle, or it's been a couple years? So try to be complete with your CPS case. Avoid us playing ping pong ball where I go back and forth trying to find that out. Also, if you call in, the same thing happens when you call in. And I'll be talking about my live call-in number that you can call. Now, a third way to interact with this podcast is to have a host. Her name is Grace. And, have a guest. And her name is Grace. She's my show producer, and she helps me arrange guests on the show. I can have up to 9 people, including me as 10 people. All you have to do is email me or email her at grace@vincentwdavis.com. That's grace@vincentwdavis.com. It's up there on the screen. And you email her with the time, whether it's morning or evening, whether it's Monday through Sunday. I have 14 podcasts. I come on typically at 10 a.m. in the morning Pacific Standard Time for an hour. And at nighttime, I come on at 7 o'clock Pacific Standard Time for an hour. And I would gladly or encourage you to be a guest. I'll put you, right next to me on the screen, and we can help your case and help other people. So a third way to interact with this podcast is to be a guest, All you do is email grace@vincentwdavis.com. Now, the fourth way of interacting with this podcast is you call me. My office number is 626-698-0990. That goes directly to my phone. I use Vonage, a live stream application. And I can take calls during my work hours here. But if you call me before my show hours or after my show hours, I can't take the call. I can't answer it. You can leave a message. I'll text you back with the hours that I'm available. So my phone number is 626-698-0990, and I'll leave that up so you can see it in the room. And that is all there is to interacting with this podcast. Now, you're probably wondering what kind of a person I am. I am a loving father. Sometimes I think I'm a dinosaur, but I'm an older father. I have 6 grown-up children. I've had 2 marriages, one for 10 years and one for 31 years. And I've had children with my first wife, and then I've had children with my second wife. But I consider my family my 6 children. Unfortunately, at the age of 60, I lost my career job through no fault of my own. And during that time, my in-laws, my wife's parents, and her sisters and brothers called in once a week to accuse us of doing something wrong with our children. This went on for 5 years. I was constantly harassed. I showed them my home. I let them in my home. And everything they were accusing me of, I would disprove. You have to understand, when they make allegations, they make it in one of 2 ways. You either make it through a professional person like a policeman, a nurse or a doctor, a school teacher, a counselor, a principal, anybody that works with children are required by law to report suspected abuse or neglect. And the professional people, quite by and large, are professional, and they do report something that may or may not be, but they're very honest there. And I think that 90% of the time, you don't have them abusing it. And so The other kind of person is the lay person, and that's where it gets abused a lot. I'd say 50% of the time they're called in, they're because they're trying to retaliate. Maybe they don't like your yard encroach in their yard, or they don't like your dog barking, so they'll make up stories. And that was true in my case. My in-laws were making up stories. They were motive was to get our children. I didn't know at the time. In fact, there's a lot of things I did not know. There's a lot of things I did not know. So I hope you all found my Facebook. It's been broken the last couple days, but we supposedly have the links, and you can follow me on there, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. I don't see my regulars because they sometimes are notified late in the game. So what I'm going to do is encourage them to join the podcast because they really are helpful. I have one woman, her name is Faye. Okay. So, with that being said, I'm doing this. I just text Faye to come and join us. She's from Kentucky. She's a single woman in her 40s. She has a child that has a special need. He's in his 20s, and she's trying to gain guardianship. She had a daughter, age 4, that was taken from her through no fault of her own. They lied. The foster care parents lied and stole her daughter. The sad part is that she'd been in and out of foster care as a small child 5 times. And she was molested and raped and trafficking. I mean, there's a whole list of things she suffered. And so she's really a good woman, and she really listens, and she will help you. She's from Richmond, Kentucky, and sometimes she joins me and helps me through my show. Now, my phone number is up right now, and I'm taking phone calls. And I encourage you to type in the comments or call me, and we can have some interaction in this room. I can do a lot of things. I can share you my story, my involvement with CPS, the do's and don'ts. I have a list of 50 or more topics that I can share with you regarding, like the ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978, or the 388 motion, which is a motion to introduce something new and have a hearing by a judge within 30 days, or the JV 160, or how to do a complaint, or what is ICPC. There's a lot of topics. So I like you all to kind of tell me what you like to hear. I also have 5 good rules. And I like you all. I go over those all the time. Now, you're going to find CPS one of the most awful experiences you ever seen with a government entity. They were terrible in my case. I lost a child because of them. I lost my home. I lost my credit. It was terrible. They take advantage of people that are low income. Now, I wasn't low income, but when I lost my job, I had my savings, but I had to cut corners and not do the things I used to do. And I lost my job through no fault of my own. And it's very hard. I lost it at 60 when they started calling me about supposedly me and my wife were violating CPS abuse or neglect. And everything I proved, I had them over my house. I did a lot of things you weren't supposed to do, but I had nothing to hide. And this went on for 5 years until one day they tricked me and got a police detective to state that I must follow him to my house. And waiting for me at my house was 5 firemen, 2 code enforcement officers, 2 uniformed police officers, 3 social workers, and the detective. They were determined to find something. That's why they were all there. Because in the past, they found nothing that my house would show neglect or abuse. But unfortunately, in my latter years, my parents were dying. And so I had all their personal belongings, and I was sending it off to family and friends. I didn't have money for a storage unit, but I had my parents' personal belongings in the living room, which created, the sight of boxes and furniture stacked. It's kind of cluttered, but they weren't in the children's bedroom. They weren't upstairs. Each child had their own bedroom. Each child was clean in their bedroom. Each child had their own bathroom. There was an eating area, several eating areas. There was the formal dining room. There was the kitchen eating area. There was a family room. And there was a study library downstairs, along with the bedrooms upstairs and the bathroom for them all. So it wasn't an issue, but they made it an issue. And that's the sad part about CPS. They're going to be corrupt. They're not going to be your friend. And it's the worst nightmare you ever walked into. At first, for the first 5 years, it was pretty easy to diffuse it. But my laypersons, my in-laws, were determined to try to get something. They were determined, so they come and repeat the things over and over and over. Now, I've notified Faye to come in. I don't see her, so maybe she got busy this evening. There, she's in Richmond, Kentucky. I have another lady that lost 2 children. She's a single mom. She's from West Hollywood, California. And so she's been really helpful, Natalie, then. Then there's been Danielle, my co-host, who's on my show regularly for a period of time, but then something came up, and so she has not been on. She's been on one time since she started being on regularly, but I don't know what's happened to her. So I got the word out, and hopefully the people will come in. It seems like the last couple of days, something has dropped off with my people coming in, and I don't know what the problem is, but I usually have 3 or 4 people every morning or every night. But lately I've not gotten anything, and I know at first we had trouble with our links with Facebook, but they're fixed. The YouTube link is fixed, and the Facebook links are fixed. And I've seen several people come in, but no one is texting a comment or calling into my number that's on the screen. So I encourage you all to participate in this live podcast. I'd like you all to tell me what you like to hear and what you like to know. I have a wealth of information because I too, after 5 years of false allegations, they finally tricked me to come to my house and let them in. Now, yes, they've been in my house before, but I did not have my parents' belongings. And that's where the mistake was. When they saw my parents' belongings, they said that could endanger the kids, and they charged with negligence. Plus, they thought the children were in danger, and they took the children. There's no reason they should have taken the children. That was wrong. They do that a lot lately. You get a false allegation, they think you're guilty, and immediately they come to your house and demand your children. Now, I'm telling you right now, don't open the door to anybody. There's no need to. If you have friends, you can give them a special knock or a special ringtone to let them in, or they can let you know that they're there. But there's nobody that you need to let in. They have your mailbox, they have your phone, they can contact you. What happens is that they'll come with the police and try to intimidate you to let you in. And there's only 3 ways they can get into your home. 1, you give them permission, or one of your family members gives them permission. 2, there is domestic violence going on, such as yelling and screaming. You don't want to do that in front of the children. And also, if a child's being strangled or hurt physically, they can enter too. So those is the second reason. The third one is if they have a court order that clearly states what they're investigating for, who they're accusing of, what the names of the children, what the accusations are, and then what are the instructions? Do they talk to you? Do they come in your home to search, or do they take your children? Because that's the mistake, and I too, of opening your home. You don't need to open your home. Nothing bad will happen. I mean, things will happen bad. They have a habit of going through your underwear drawer. I have no idea why they do that. Looking for drugs. So I'm telling you, don't open the door. And that is largely due to all the people that are being killed opening the door. There's an Air Force man who was only 23, and on May 3rd, he was shot point blank in the chest while he was talking to his girlfriend on FaceTime. That's wrong. He's dead. The policeman that did it took him a week later before they made charges against that policeman. But I don't know where the case is now. But you got to be careful. You don't let them in your home. You don't talk to them. If you encounter them, tell them that you're going to talk to your attorney first, and they will talk to you. You need to get an attorney. That leads me into my first rule. My first rule is that you call into 888-888-6582, and you ask the office that you want to speak to Mr. Davis and have a consultation. Mr. Davis is a 35-year-old experienced lawyer in the areas of juvenile, family, and dependency court. He has fought CPS and won cases and got children back. So he's a real fighter. And he will talk to you. I have a special arrangements that he will talk to you on Zoom about your case and how you get your kids back. He also talked to you about retaining him. He can be retained. Right now he has a case in Oklahoma. He has a case in Northern California, and he has several cases in Southern California. But he will fit you in. He will talk to you on that one. So all you have to do is call that office, and it's 888-888-6582. Now make sure when you call in the office, you tell them that Bob Pace sent you. And when you speak to Mr. Davis, you say Bob Pace sent you. It's very important that he hears it. So you can you cannot have to give up your children or let them in your home. What you can do is talk to your attorney, and you can tell them, hey, I have an attorney first I need to talk to before I go any further with you. You have a right to do that. They don't need to open up your home or your belongings or anything else. So you don't talk to them, you go and talk to an attorney. And I tell you right now, I got this attorney. He's only 30 minutes for $60. There may be some free attorneys out there, but Vincent charges because he wants to make sure you show up. It's a nominal fee, 30 minutes, $60. And I want to thank Mr. Davis because he's helped out this podcast. He has his own podcast and he does live Zoom meetings about CPS. He has a school that you can join for a subscription rate. But CPS is very complicated. And you're not going to be able to fight them on your own or use a attorney that doesn't have experience that is free. The court-appointed attorneys are terrible. They're not worth the time and energy because they're not going to fight. They're not trained in dependency law, and they're not paid very much, and they're friends of the judge and the social worker and attorneys. And this is from firsthand experience. I don't know how much I have to tell you that you got to have an attorney because can you imagine doing open heart surgery with a mechanic or a dishwasher or somebody else? No, you need a professional. And that's what Mr. Davis is because there's so many twists and turns that CPS has. They'll take advantage of your situation. Their goal is to make money off you. Their goal is not to help you. They rather keep you string on edge and bankrupt you, and not be fair. Okay, I don't have any phone calls yet, and I have nobody texting any messages. So again, I extend you a warm welcome. A warm welcome. Now, I told you about my rule number 3 about not entering the home, not opening the door, and not talking to them. The problem being is they're evil. They will use what you say against you. They'll automatically put your child in foster care even though they don't belong in foster care. But I'm really concerned about your case and getting the best help you can. That's why I can talk to you about anything you'd like to know about CPS. I was involved in CPS from 2010 to 2015. It was just answering allegations. But in 2015, that's when it got bad. And then my kids were returned in 2018. So 3 years later. But they were messed up. Foster care had messed up my kids. The child protection entity has messed up my kids. So it's been a long day, and I know you guys are tired. And on the East Coast, it's after 10 o'clock at night. But I'd like some anybody to talk or call in. I'm going to see if Faye, she was telling about some news that she had that she wanted to share with you all. So I'm going to see if she's available to talk to us. I'm calling Faye right now.
Hello.
Hi there, Faye. I know you're under the weather, but I was calling in to see if you had any new news to tell us on the podcast, what you've been doing lately.
Basically just the same thing, working with a reporter to try to get out what's going on in the state that I'm in and the counties surrounding with the agencies as far as ADA violations for people with disabilities and policies, procedures, and laws that the Department of Children-Based Services is breaking.
Is there any updates on that? How's it going?
Not as of yet. Right now it's just getting all the details together.
But you did tell me you talked to a news reporter that wanted to hear you.
Right, and we're working on that.
Right.
We're getting all the
several days.
All of the,
several days ago, Faye and I were wondering how we could help. And so we contacted Congress. They have a phone number. We did get an operator. And then we wanted to talk to a congressman or woman that would maybe listen to us. And we were exhausting our congressmen or women in our states because the state of Kentucky is so corrupt. So they gave us a number for Senator Schuler, that is a Democrat from New York. And I left a message on his phone over 48 hours ago. He's not returned my call. Now, I know that Faye says they need 48 hours, to return a call, but now it's going on a little bit longer than 48 hours. But we are trying to make a difference because it's not fair to you parents. CPS is very corrupt, as I've been telling you all along tonight. They're not your friend, and they don't understand that the best parents are the biological parents, and they think they have to insist of taking your children when they're not in domestic, in danger. They're not in any immediate danger. So they do something called alienation, which is against the law. That's where they try to get the parents being alienated from their children and vice versa. When my kids were in foster care, they were told never to hug parents, keep your hands at your side when you greeted your parents. That was a hard thing for us to understand because we're a touchy family. We give each other hugs. And I tell my kids daily how much I love them. So, to all you listeners out there, it's very important as families that we don't argue. That's one of the worst things we can do in front of children is argue. And we need to take a time out from arguing. I use analogy. Football teams have timeouts all the time. Why they do timeouts is to think things out. Things got really hectic and they want to think about the next plan of action. Well, you as parents, if you're arguing and you're getting very verbal, almost to the point where you're strangling each other or using weapons, the police and social workers will come and take your children away. Not right. So what you need to do is that one of you has got to go up and bite the bullet and say, I'm taking a timeout. I'll be back to talk to you further. And you can do a timeout and think about what was transpiring and then come back and attempt to talk it out. But as parents, we should use timeouts. Also with children, you should use timeouts. It's not good to take a spoon and whack a child or a belt and get welts on his butt or those kinds of things are corporate punishment. It's very important you identify the problem, you have the child sit and think about it, then you bring them back and talk to them further. Too many of us, including myself, would do timeout so fast, but we would never reconcile with the child. It's like, okay, time's off. Now they'll go back to play their game or do what they're doing. But it's important that you meet with them and explain and let them figure out how to resolve the timeout. So timeout is a necessity in child protection services because it's going to get you in trouble if you sit there and argue with parents. That's not going to work. And you really can't argue with social workers. They are bad. I tell people you're like Alice in Wonderland. You've fallen in a rabbit hole. You talk to the Cheshire cat, and the cat says, go to this room. And you go to that room, they say, off with your head. It's crazy. It really is crazy. So you got to keep your cool, and you got to be aware of what's going on. Now, the reason why Faye and I are trying to get help to fight CPS, because right now they automatically get a case and they put your children in foster care. Why? It's a $1 trillion business. Not million, not billions, but trillions of dollars. And that's why they're doing it. It's a money, it's a greed thing. They're not transparent. In fact, there's one place in Richmond, Kentucky, where $1 million has gone unaccounted for. They don't know where the $1 million was spent. And there's also a guy in that same county that's being indicted for taking funds that weren't his. It's all a money laundering thing. CPS is no good. And they're going to ruin you. And especially if you don't get a real attorney. If you have a court-appointed attorney, I'm not saying you can't use them. That may be the only thing you got. But they're not well qualified. They're not well paid. And they have a caseload of 30 more clients. And they will not fight for your case. They'll not fight for your case. So I'm telling you, you need to get that attorney. And you need to protect your civil and constitutional rights. You don't need to open doors, let them in. You don't need to talk to them. All you need to do is get the phone number of the officer and the phone number of the social worker, and you'll say your attorney gets back. In fact, I think now if a lot of you say you have an attorney, that may get them off your back because they don't know if you have an attorney if you don't say anything. So it's best that you say you got an attorney, you're going to talk to him. Meanwhile, you need to find an attorney to talk about your case. Now, you don't talk to social workers because they will use what you say against you. And so it's a real hard juggling act of your time with social workers. They're not your friend. They will lie to you and they retaliate you. Example of great social workers are the Prescott ladies, the white ladies from Prescott, Arizona. There's 8 of them, and they have been working for a total of 25 years. And they decided on a whimsical note to buy pink t-shirts and have something stenciled on the front that clearly said they're professional child kidnappers. Thank you, Faye. Had a middle thing. Professional child kidnappers. And on the back of the shirt, they said, do you know where your children are at? And if you can imagine the looks on parents' face, because they were parading in Walmart, Costco, in Target, and Best Buy, all the big stores. They were caught, they were fired, as well as the director. But that's the example. Or in my case, I finally hired Vincent Davis. He got my 2 boys back, but I lost my daughter. And what happened with my daughter is my wife's sister and husband were trying to adopt her, and we didn't want that to happen. So Vince was trying to hold on, Vince, my attorney there, was trying to cross-examine her to see what kind of parents these were, because he had a plan. And he asked the social worker, who was in her early 20s, no license, no college degree. I don't think she had a high school degree. And she was entrusted with our kids. And he asked her what kind of parents was my wife's sister and husband. And she said they're great parents. Then he asked her, did they ever have domestic violence? Oh, no domestic violence. Well, Vincent said, well, I have something maybe you could help me. So he brings out a folder out of his briefcase, opens it up. It's an inch thick folder. And there's at least 30 legal documents in it. And each of them is a report of domestic violence, extreme domestic violence, where physical alterations happen. And he said, he started with the dates, and he asked the social worker, what about this incident? Then the next date, what about this incident? What about, by that time, the social worker was in tears and embarrassed because she committed perjury. You can't lie. Also, she could be sued. And Vincent says she's a perfect candidate for a lawsuit. But he wanted a $50,000 retainer to sue that social worker. I didn't have that. I already spent millions on that attorney to get my boys back. So I'm telling you, they're very corrupt. They're not your friend. And they will steal your children. They will traffic your children. So you got to be careful when you're dealing with CPS, the Child Protection System. A lot of you have been in foster care as a young child, and then you grow up, you fall in love, you have children. They keep a record on you. They'll come and get you again. And I think the clue is, I'm trying to understand, it's all about money. They don't get money from you. They get money from the state, who in turn gets it from the federal government with no questions asked. In my case, my 3 children total $60,000 per month. If you had 100 parents with 3 children each, that'd be $6 million. So it's $1 trillion business that they're making off you. And you got to understand that they're not your friend. And we've had numerous of people on the podcast saying how they made promises and reneged the promises. Or they stole your children. Or your children were hurt in foster care. And that's sad. I don't like hearing that. I really don't. Now, I did tell you that there's only several ways they can come into your home. One, if you give them permission, or a family or friend gives permission. You don't want to do that. 2, if there's domestic violence going on, and there's fighting or arguments or whatever in front of the children, and the children are being harmed, then the police and the social worker will intervene. And the third way they can get in the home is if they have a court warrant. But warrants are tricky. They got to be validated. They got to be a wet signature. Also, where the signature is, there's an embossed stamp. It's a raised part of the paper. It's got to be very explicit and state your name or your wife's name or your partner's name. And it's supposed to state the names of the children and the allegations. They'll state the allegations. And then they'll state the address and the date and time they can come visiting and what they can do. What they can do. It's got to be on that warrant. If they don't have the warrant, don't let them in. I just assume is that if the doorbell rings, you keep quiet. And if it knocks, the same thing. Because they know how they get a hold of you. They get a hold of you other ways. But what they want to do is they want ammunition. They did it in my case. They tricked me and got into my home. And unfortunately, my parents were passing away. They've been married for 55 years. So they had all these belongings in their home of 4,000 square feet. So I didn't have money to put them in storage, but I want to help out my mom and dad. So I was sorting them in the living room. They weren't hurting anybody else. Furniture will not fly. Boxes will not fly. They were not in the kids' room. But they insisted, and it was very rude how they were. The policemen and the firemen and the code enforcement had combat boots. They're very intimidating. They stepped on my white rattan furniture, broke it. The firemen tried to look for any fire code, and they couldn't find any. I mean, they were so bad that they were measuring how the smoke alarms were installed and if they work. And I had fire extinguishers around the stove, which wasn't required, but they checked to make sure the fire extinguishers were full. Code enforcement made sure that the back door to the swimming pool was well locked and chained, and also the pool had a fence around it so no one could walk into the pool. Now, my kids are all swimmers. They're being surfers. They're out in that ocean, so they have no problem swimming in the pool. We taught them at a young age. We taught them at a young age when they were infants. I mean, it's amazing the techniques I know about how teaching people to swim. But they were determined. Code enforcement only found a loose bolt and nut on the gate and that my yard needed a haircut. I didn't have the funds to continue paying my landscaper. So yes, the yard was shaggy. It needed trimming. And the only other thing the social workers found was neglect, because they say that the boxes of furniture could endanger my children. And they're extreme danger. So they had to rush them to a shelter that first night that they took them. The only trouble with the shelter, it was in Orange County next to the juvenile prison. It was very convenient for near the courts. The dependency court were usually walked from the shelter, but it was overcrowded and my children were at risk. And their idea of education was reading a book. Now, all three of my children were in the STEM program. So that's where they take a science class, a technology class, an engineering class, and a math program. Both my boys wanted to be engineers. And my daughter wanted to do something with science too. But this social worker ruined my daughter. Her retaliation is that she told our daughter, you had to divorce your parents, emancipate your parents, your brothers, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles and cousins. She did all that. She divorced us. She's at age 12. She can do that in California. And that hurt me a lot because she's now 22 and she's not a part of our life. CPS stole my daughter. They stole my home. They ruined my credit. And they abused my boys. My boys still have problems today. So, I was in the sun today, I think, and my eyes look tired, but they're open. But they look tired. And I'm wide awake. And I care about all of you. I just want you all to think when you're messing around with them how bad they are. dealing with social workers is like open heart surgery. You're not going to have an auto mechanic, do your open heart surgery. You're going to get a professional doctor. That's why you need a professional attorney. And you got nothing to lose because you can contact Vincent Davis and get that consultation. Now, we got about 10 minutes left. I mentioned earlier on the show about ICWA, the Indian Child Welfare Act of 1978. What that act did is that our Indian children, for a long time, since the 1880s, 70s, everybody was placed on reservations, their hair's cut off, they're robbed of their clothing, not to speak the language, and they were trying to eradicate the Native Americans' heritage. And so that went on for a long time. But in 1978, what was happening is our Indian children were never being reunified with the family. Never being reunified with the family. Now, we just had someone, Raquel Schuler, that came in. She's been in here before, I think. She has a question. Why is it okay for CPS to alienate children from parents and vice versa, but it's not okay for a parent to do it? It's emotional abuse, right? What could be criminally charged but never CPS? Well, let me tell you about alienation. First of all, if parents do it to try to get one parent alienated from their children, it's wrong. It's illegal. You don't want to do that. The same thing goes true for CPS. But unless you get yourself an attorney, they're going to abuse you. They're going to take advantage of you. Why? Because you don't have a strong representation. You need somebody that knows how to deal with this very corrupt agency. And I want to welcome you, Rachel. I don't know what city, state, or country you're from. Rachel, if you could tell me what you are, that'd be great. Anyway, welcome, Rachel. I agree, Rachel. Not when CPS does. It's wrong. It's against the law. But they're going to do it. CPS does not care about your constitutional rights. They're not going to care about your constitutional rights. Okay, Rachel's from Austin, Texas. Welcome, Austin, Texas. I'm glad to have you here, Rachel. How did you find out about our podcast? Did you see the notifications on CPS? I mean, on Facebook? Did you see the notifications on Facebook? Wow. You're the girl. I know you've been on here before, and I'm glad that you're here. Now, Rachel says something horrific, which I think also Faye has the same thing. I'm here all the time. The girl who grew up in custody, and then they terminated my rights to 7 of my 8 children. That is horrific to hear about that. And you've been on the horror stories one. Yes, I get you in my feed. Okay, Rachel, I'm so glad that you joined my room and posted the comments. I'm also so sorry that you're abused when you were in foster care. That's not right. And you've lost 7 of your 8 kids. That's a lot of children. Now, she says, after I put them where they still are, and then, let me see, they're still in foster care. Imagine what you're saying. they're still in foster care. So Rachel from Austin, Texas, lost 7 of her 8 kids. And that is how corrupt the Child Protection Agency is. I told them how they took my children. I talked about the pink ladies that wore T-shirts stenciled "Professional Child Kidnappers" and "Wear Your Children" on the back. And then Rachel further says, I place them where they are, and then CPS terminated my rights and deemed the places appropriate. Now they're adopted by my family members. So your family members have come in and adopted your children. Maybe you can still see your children. That sounds a really horrific thing. I wish you came on earlier and we could talk more about your case. You could call in to my number. But at least they're with family members. That's better than with strangers or be abused in foster care. So I'm glad about that, Rachel from Austin, Texas. Now it's getting close to 8 o'clock. I have a couple minutes before I need to end my show. Now Rachel says when she became unstable, I sent them to safe places and you cannot see them. Yes, Rachel. Call me tomorrow at my 10 o'clock. Oh, excuse me. By the way, everybody, tomorrow is Saturday. I'll see you at 10 o'clock tomorrow on Saturday. That is my Saturday show. Sunday is when I come on at 8. But tomorrow I'll be on at 10 o'clock. And I'd love to have you on the show, Rachel. And you can call in and talk about that. I want to thank about Faye, who's been listening and helping me with my podcast. She's under the weather. She's fighting COVID. Her son got it. Now she hasn't. But she's a remarkable woman. And she's trying to get her son in custody. And Rachel, I know how hard it must be to lose all your children. That's horrible to hear that. But I'm glad you called in and text and talked to me. Well, right now it's 8 o'clock, and so I'm going to end my podcast. I want to thank you all for coming and joining my podcast. I'll be on again tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time.